You are floating in a fiberglass boat. The water is warm. The island ahead of you is covered in dense, impenetrable green jungle. You raise your hand to wave, and an arrow pierces your chest. You did not come to conquer. You came to observe. But the 50 people living on that shore do not see an observer. They see an apex predator. And here's what is actually happening. You are not looking at a primitive tribe frozen in time. You are looking at the most successful border control agency in human history. Let us take a step back and look at the full picture. Most content treats the Sentinelese as a spooky mystery or a tragic zoo exhibit. We look at North Sentinel Island, and we see a ghost story. We see a group of people who somehow missed the memo about agriculture, industry, and the internet. But this entire framing is built on a massive, arrogant assumption. It assumes that isolation is an accident. It assumes that they are trapped in the Paleolithic era because they simply do not know any better. But recent anthropological shifts completely destroy this idea. In 2024, researcher S. Paul published a groundbreaking analysis in the journal Nature, Humanities, and Social Sciences Communications that fundamentally shifts the narrative. The Sentinelese are not frozen in time. They possess complex, active knowledge systems. They have agency. They are not hiding from history. They are actively rejecting it. If you had the technology to safely observe them without being seen, would you do it, or is the act of watching itself a violation? Let me know in the comments. Here's something that genuinely surprises most people. We assume that leaving them alone is a passive act. We think that by staying away, we are simply pressing pause on their timeline. But isolation is not a pause button. Isolation is an active, highly volatile biological state. Let us talk about what actually happens if you go to North Sentinel Island. You might think the danger is the arrows. You might think the primary threat is a spear to the chest or a club to the skull. But the arrows are just the first line of defense. The real weapon is microscopic. The population of North Sentinel Island is estimated to number between 50 and 150 people. That is not a civilization. That is a genetic bottleneck. When a population remains completely closed off for tens of thousands of years, their immune systems undergo a process of radical specialization. They adapt to the specific localized pathogens of their immediate environment. They develop robust defenses against the local parasites, the local bacteria, the local fungi. But they completely lose the immunological baseline data required to fight off the rest of the world. Recent epidemiological models on isolated Andamanese pathogen vulnerability paint a terrifying picture. If a single modern human were to successfully land on that beach, shed a few skin cells, cough into the humid air, or leave behind a half-empty plastic water bottle, the result would not be a minor cold. It would be a 90% population extinction event within weeks. Think about the sheer biological violence of a common rhinovirus to you. It is a minor inconvenience. You take a decongestant, you drink some tea, you complain about a sore throat, and you go back to work. But to a naive immune system that has never encountered the genetic markers of a globalized pathogen, that same rhinovirus is an alien invasion. The macrophages do not recognize the threat. The T cells fail to mount a coordinated defense. The virus replicates unchecked, triggering a massive cytokine storm that essentially drowns the host in their own inflammatory response. The Sentinelese are not just defending their territory from trespassers, they are defending their biological integrity from a microscopic apocalypse. One sneeze, and an entire branch of the human family tree snaps off forever. But here's where it gets interesting. If they are so vulnerable, and if they are so outnumbered, how do they perceive the modern humans who occasionally drift into their waters? Do the Sentinelese know about the outside world? The popular myth, perpetuated by decades of sensationalist media, is that they think we are gods. They see a helicopter and they think it is a giant metal bird sent from the heavens. They see a missionary in a wooden boat and they think he is a spirit. This is a profoundly condescending projection of our own historical myths onto a highly intelligent, deeply observant group of hunter-gatherers. The Sentinelese do not think we are gods. They recognize our metal birds and our fiberglass boats for exactly what they are. They are the territory markers of a rival, hyper-aggressive hominid species. They have watched us for centuries. They watched the British colonial ships arrive in the 1800s. They watched the Indian government gift-giving expeditions of the 1960s through the 1990s. They watched the distant trawlers strip the fish from the surrounding reefs. They have accumulated generations of observational data on our behavior, and the conclusion they have drawn from that data is entirely rational. We are loud, we are destructive. We consume everything in our path, and we do not respect boundaries. When the 26-year-old United States evangelical missionary John Allen Chow approached the island in late November of 2018, he did not see a sovereign nation, he saw a challenge. He saw a group of lost souls waiting for his specific brand of salvation. He took a fiberglass dinghy to the shore, carrying a Bible and a naive belief in his own divine protection. The Sentinelese did not see a messenger of peace. They saw a vector for disease. They saw a scout for a hostile empire. They neutralized the threat with the exact same cold, calculated efficiency that their ancestors used to neutralize leopards and rival tribes. They did not kill him out of primitive savagery. They killed him because their risk assessment protocol dictated that any uninvited contact was an existential threat. We are not deities descending from the clouds. We are the noisy, aggressive neighbors they finally decided to build a wall against. If this deep dive is changing how you see human history, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with 3 friends who still think the Stone Age was just a stepping stone to modern life. Now let us zoom out from the individual to the entire digital ecosystem. The historical threats to the Sentinelese were colonial empires, opportunistic poachers, and misguided missionaries, but the threat landscape has radically mutated. According to a March 2025 update from Survival International, the primary existential threat to uncontacted tribes is no longer the state. It is the algorithm. We are now living in the era of the clout-chasing influencer. Consider the case of individuals like Mihailo Viktorovich and a growing wave of social media personalities who view uncontacted tribes not as sovereign peoples but as ultimate content opportunities. The barrier to entry for harassing an isolated tribe has plummeted. You no longer need to charter a naval vessel or bribe local officials. You just need a waterproof drone, a high-resolution camera, and a desire for internet fame. A single influencer can fly a quadcopter over the jungle canopy, capturing high-definition footage of the tribe's daily movements, their shelter structures, their hunting patterns. They upload it to a platform, harvest millions of views, and monetize the attention. But the damage is not just voyeuristic. Every drone that crashes into the canopy introduces foreign materials. Every boat that idles off the coast introduces acoustic pollution that disrupts their hunting and communication. Every piece of trash that washes ashore introduces novel pathogens. The British Empire, with all its naval might and colonial ambition, could not break the Sentinelese. They tried, they kidnapped children, they established the disastrous Andaman home, they tried to force integration, and they failed. The Sentinelese retreated deeper into the jungle and waited them out. But a single viral video might succeed where the empire failed. The greatest threat to the last uncontacted humans on Earth is not a colonial empire, but a waterproof camera and a desire for internet fame. Here's the thing nobody tells you about international law. It is entirely unequipped to handle the biological reality of extreme isolation. This brings us to the ultimate ethical paradox. Why is it illegal to visit North Sentinel Island? The legal framework is built on the 2007 United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. This declaration enshrines the right to self-determination and autonomy. In the case of uncontacted peoples, the global consensus has interpreted this to mean the absolute right to be left alone. The Indian government enforces an exclusion zone. The Coast Guard patrols the perimeter. The law says that no matter how well-intentioned you are, you must respect their apparent unwillingness to engage with the outside world. But here's the paradox that keeps anthropologists awake at night. Autonomy means self-governance. It means the right to manage your own internal affairs. But does the right to autonomy necessarily entail the right to be left alone when your very existence is a biological time bomb? We are looking at a population of 50 to 150 individuals. They form relationships exclusively within the group. Over thousands of years, this level of endogamy inevitably leads to severe inbreeding depression. Recessive genetic mutations begin to compound. Fertility rates drop. Infant mortality rises. The genetic diversity required to adapt to shifting environmental pressures simply evaporates. By enforcing a strict no-contact policy, we are protecting them from the immediate threat of foreign pathogens and colonial violence. But we might be condemning them to a slow, inevitable genetic collapse. We are standing on the shore watching a small, isolated population slowly suffocate under the weight of its own restricted gene pool, and we are calling it human rights. We must ask what the status of the right to autonomy is against other potentially competing entitlements all humans have, such as the right to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of health. If survival were genuinely at stake, is it still just a local affair? We gave them the right to autonomy, but we might have accidentally handed them a slow-motion death sentence. Let us zoom out one final time. The honest answer is that the Sentinelese are not a museum exhibit. They are not a living fossil waiting to be cataloged, studied, and eventually absorbed into the modern machine. They are a mirror. They reflect back to us the absolute baseline of human territoriality, the raw, unfiltered instinct to protect one's own kin from the overwhelming, consuming tide of globalization. When we look at North Sentinel Island, we feel a strange mixture of awe and frustration. We are frustrated because we cannot know them. We cannot map their language. We cannot sequence their deoxyribonucleic acid. We cannot integrate their stories into our grand, linear narrative of human progress. But that frustration is entirely our own problem. It is our desperate need to categorize, to consume, to understand everything that exists on this planet. The Sentinelese have simply opted out of that game. They have looked at the sprawling, noisy, disease-ridden, hyper-connected civilization that we have built, and they have made a collective, rational decision to want absolutely no part of it. They are there, they adapted, they moved in, and they pulled the ladder up behind them. You are floating in a fiberglass boat, and the arrow in your chest is not an act of primitive savagery, but the ultimate, rational defense of a world that simply wants to be left alone.